Nigeria is serious about protecting Christians, because that's the narrative now, that Christians in Nigeria have been persecuted and being killed. The attack was stated as attacking insurgents, and according to President Trump himself, it was aimed at striking a blow against those who were persecuting and killing Christians.
Maduro was taken out, and the military operation was brilliant, but it's all about oil now. Iran is now in the crosshairs, again, oil. What a lot of people don't know is that Nigeria is also rich in oil. Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Olawole Fajusigbe. He's a lawyer who is joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. Today we will talk about US-Nigeria relations under President Donald Trump. On 27 December 2025, the United States conducted airstrikes inside Nigeria targeting Islamic groups. Wole, first of all, welcome and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Rohan.
So let's jump right in. Where did these airstrikes happen, and why do you think the Trump administration carried them out in Nigeria?
Okay. The airstrikes happened in the northwestern part of Nigeria, specifically Sokoto State. Now, just for geographical purposes, Sokoto is bordered by the country of Niger, and there was a military coup in Niger in 2023. And just prior to that military coup, there was a U.S. surveillance base situated in Niger, which was surveilling extremists in the area. After the coup, the government in charge of Niger expelled the U.S. forces from that base. So maybe it's a reprisal attack, maybe it's something to do with that, but that's a separate fact on itself. The attack was stated as attacking insurgents, and according to President Trump himself, it was aimed at striking a blow against those who were persecuting and killing Christians. However, according to the Nigerian government, they said it was actually aimed at targeting and destabilizing insurgents, which were destabilizing the region and actually promoting unrest. So, and Nigeria and the US actually stated that the Nigerian government actually stated that they spoke to the United States government for partnership to actually carry out the strike. But unfortunately, afterwards, there was no joint statement by both parties, so there were divergent views on protecting Christians and fomenting instability or whatever it was. So that's basically what happened on the days in question.
Right. Well, I want our viewers to know that Niger used to have a sizable US force, and once they left, it was actually the Russians who came in and took over the exact bases that the US once operated from. So perhaps it was messaging to China as well. You know Trump, how he is. He gets petty when it's about geopolitics. But why do you think when he targeted Nigeria, he was very clear in his social media posts, and he said that these airstrikes were to protect Christians? What did it mean? You're in Nigeria. Are Christians really in danger in the country?
If you study a lot of groups online with polls, Nigeria ranks among the top 10 in the most dangerous places for Christians to live globally. But you also have to have a local understanding of what happens. The attacks happen in the northwest, and we've been having severe crises in the northwest and the northeastern part of Nigeria. The predominant population of people in these areas are adherents of Islam, Muslims, and there's a Christian minority. So, yes, Christians are in danger, but not necessarily because they are being specifically targeted. Because apart from Christians being targeted, other Muslims are being targeted, other adherents of traditional religions are being targeted. We've been having issues of serious kidnappings and killings, and it's not as if people go in and target only the Christians. Even though I should also say there have been reports where churches have been burnt and there have been attacks on different religious whatever. But it is also fair to say that other members of other religions have been targeted. So are Christians in danger? I would say yes and no.
Right. Well, Wole, you're a lawyer, and you've been working in this field for a while. You've handled a lot of humanitarian conflict in the country. You worked with actors and organizations that are in this space. So what is happening in Nigeria right now? Because this is not new. This has been going on for a while. I remember the last time we spoke about how Christian students were targeted and they were kidnapped. They were eventually released. So clearly, Christians are being targeted. Is there a religious conflict going on in the country right now?
Okay, for about 10, 15 years, we've been having issues with Boko Haram. And Boko Haram and ISWAP, which is Islamic State for West Africa province, have a stated intent of creating an Islamic caliphate. That's their stated intent. And in an Islamic caliphate, infidels, which would be Christians and other people who are not adherents of Islam, and in some cases, moderate Muslims who do not follow the radical views of Islam that this some of these insurgents profess, may also be targets. So, if you look at it from that lens, you could say there's a religious conflict going on in Nigeria. However, it's also good to look at it from another issue. Now, most of the we've had issues with cattle grazers and farmers. Most of these cattle herders and grazers are predominantly Muslims, and they are taking their cattle, they are looking for grazing lands, are coming down south, where most of the farmers are predominantly Christians. So they've had clashes where they've destroyed farmlands, and there have been reprisals where cattle have been killed. And if you looked at such a conflict without understanding economic and the ethnic land disputes prevalent within that, then you could say, oh, it's a religious conflict. Meanwhile, it may be religious, but it's underpinned by economic factors and land disputes. So, when you say is there a religious conflict, the best way to say it is black and white. Are you saying there's a stated intent by a majority of adherents of Islam, for example,
Mhm.
to wipe out or persecute all Christians in Nigeria? And if you ask the question that way, you would say no. You would say there's a minority of malcontents who are trying to foster an agenda in which they are trying to color every clash or every conflict in a religious undertone. So I think that's primarily the issue. And I'd spoken earlier that the Muslims in the Northwest are the majority and the Christians are the minority. But we should also remember that even in this conflict, there are some of the times Muslims are kidnapped, Muslims are killed, and other people of traditional religions face different things. So it will be unfair to just come out blanket and say, oh, it's only the Christians that are suffering or facing any kind of lack.
Right. Well, Trump has said that he will authorize more airstrikes if Christians are in danger, and of course, the U.S. military is much stronger than Nigeria's, and this is not the first time that they've carried out airstrikes in another country, especially targeting Islamic groups. So, how is Nigeria looking at this? We know that the Nigerian government has hired a major lobbying firm to swing opinion in the Trump administration. Do you think that will work? And second of all, what are some of the other aspects where Nigeria can work to get into Trump's good books?
Let me start from it. The Minister of Defense was quoted making a statement where he said military intervention will only solve about 30% of the current issues, that the other 70% depends on good government. And like nature abhors a lacuna. So in most of these remote areas where these insurgent groups take root, there's a lack of government, or there's a lack of government presence. So these insurgent groups come up and provide themselves as a form of alternative government. So the intent, what Nigeria has to do is actually to take ownership of the situation, which it has done, and actually take concrete steps towards ridding the country of these insurgents. If they have to go into partnerships, if they have to do whatever, they can do that. Now, you talked about the lobbying group, and the lobbying group is the mandate of the lobbying group is to show the Americans that Nigeria is serious about protecting Christians, because that's the narrative now, that Christians in Nigeria are being persecuted and being killed, and the Nigerian government is trying to show that. But I think it goes beyond mere rhetorics to what you are doing.
Hmm.
So, like most times, we've also had issues of possible collusion by law enforcement agents and insurgents, where maybe some people are securing an area and just before an attack occurs, there are no law enforcement agents and the attack goes on unheeded. So the question is the Nigerian government has to show a semblance of seriousness, has to show a semblance of security, and has to show that they're actually dealing with the problem. So this deals with arrests, convictions, and breaking of camps. I mean, and stopping kidnappings, at least securing, just becoming, for essentially securing or maintaining or adhering to the social contracts. That is what the Nigerian government has to do. And then those actions will naturally translate into positive speak that the lobbying group can use to speak to Congress and say, okay, this is what these people are doing to secure the appropriate space for safety.
Right. Wole, I want to talk about what the Trump administration has done in the new year. They've put a travel restriction on 75 countries. They're not issuing visas anymore for them. Nigeria is in that list, and one of the reasons why Nigeria is in that list is because the Trump administration says that the largest amount of illegal immigrants from Africa come from Nigeria, and this has been their promise that they would crack down on illegal immigration. Um, but now they've even cracked down on legal migration, which is with the visa ban. So, how do you see U.S. Nigeria relations in Trump 2.0? Do you think they're going to deteriorate further?
To be fair to President Trump, during his first term, he had actually raised some of these issues, and he raised issues about vetting because there were intelligence that some insurgents in Niger, Senegal would trying to get access to America would take advantage of the lax procedures in Nigeria and use that to get Nigerian passports and obtain visas and all that. So to be fair to President Trump, he has a point there. But in light of that, Nigeria is also one of the largest contributors of international students to the United States of America. So if you are frustrating that, and when you say Nigeria has the largest number of illegal immigrants, I believe that's an academic question. Nigeria is the most populous black nation in the world.
Hmm.
So it's only common sense that a lot of people who come from Nigeria will, it's just like if a country with 10 million citizens and maybe 20,000 of them default or overstay on their visa, nobody's going to notice that because 20,000 is like a drop in the ocean. But when a country
Right.
of like 20 to 20 million and people are applying for visa, so it's just normal academic. So to be fair to both parties, Nigerian relations in a flux in that Nigeria now has to do more. But the question I've always said as a philosophical question, and I say this to most friends, it's a challenge to Nigeria and other countries to focus on development. Because the
Hmm.
question is, why are people applying for visa in droves? Because you can't provide the things they need in your country. So if you focus on your country and at least give a semblance, even if you can't get to where all the developed nations are, but if at least show a progressive movement towards that, then people can say, okay, why should I spend money on a visa when I can stay in my country and achieve the dream of life, as it were?
Hmm.
So it's a challenge to all parties to develop themselves and see what best they can do to actually get better. I think that's just how it is. Improvement in US Nigeria relations. We were talking about what happened in Venezuela with Maduro,
Yeah.
which is still there. And 2026 is like the year of seismic global geopolitical shifts.
Yes.
So it's like, and President Trump had a meeting with the Ukrainian President Zelensky a few weeks ago, and while a lot of outsiders expected him to just put a table and give Zelensky what he wanted, apparently he didn't give him everything he wanted. So there's a lot of global geopolitical shifts that are affecting interstate relations as we go on. So it's just for states to find a way to ensure that they remain on the right path and not necessarily kowtow or bow to all the demands of the United States, but also actually maintain and ensure their sovereignty in the midst of whatever is occurring.
Yeah. Well, do you think Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is working towards being on the good side of Donald Trump? Because, well, Maduro was taken out, and the military operation was brilliant, but it's all about oil now. Iran is now in the crosshairs again. Oil. What a lot of people don't know is that Nigeria is also rich in oil. So, do you think that's something that is bothering the Nigerian leadership, or could be bothering the Nigerian leadership this year?
Um, I really don't think, well, maybe because they have more intelligence than I do. Maybe it's bothering them, but I don't think the US wants to be engaged in a battle on several fronts. I don't think
Hmm.
so. And even though the president has intimated that he's ready, he's been talking of Greenland, which belongs to Denmark, and and this is just the 15th of January, which I said this is just 2026. So a lot has gone on. I think the government may be worried, but I think you don't want to cause instability in a country of 250 million people, because if you
Hmm.
cause instability by such interventions, it could have a ripple effect on several African countries and destabilize the entire continent. So I think
Right.
the US may not go that far.
Hmm.
However, it's, as I said, it's a call for better leadership. It's a call for better government. It's a call to actually sit down and do the things you're supposed to do. And then you can boldly look back and say, okay, I have done my best, we have done my best, our best, and we can go on safely.
Right. Very quickly before we wrap this up, Vole, how did ordinary Nigerians view the U.S. airstrikes? Did they say were they happy? Were they worried? Or were they angry?
Okay. I've had divergent views on these opinions. Whenever some people talk, they say, remember Libya, Iraq, Vietnam, places where the US have gone in for intervention and have left them worse than when they met them. So a school of thought is like, we don't want that to happen in Nigeria. Another school of thought, which feels maybe persecuted by governments, seem to say they would welcome an intervention in the Maduro style. Even though the question I always ask people is, what happens after? What happens after the chaos? Who rules? What happens to government? What happens to democracy? What happens? Because most times people don't think about the aftermath. They just think about what pleases or what helps them. So Nigerians are worried, and Nigerians are wondering why the US is like, there's something they used to call gunboat diplomacy, where the US will just park an aircraft carrier off your coast, and
Hmm.
everybody's wondering, are they coming for us? What is happening? Or maybe they are flying surveillance aircraft repeatedly, and people are wondering what's happening. And especially what happened to Maduro, which was shocking. It was like so easy. So,
Yeah.
so people are wondering what's going to happen. And as I said, the currency is oil. But I also remind people that and this is 2026, this is 22 years after the Rwandan genocide. And because there were no economic interests per se, over a million Rwandans died and nothing happened. And it was the Rwandan um, rebels led by the President Paul Kagame, which actually stopped genocide. So I always tell people that we are on our own. Don't look for a savior out there. There's no savior out there. The best solutions come from us. And that takes me, I tell people that successful and sustainable peace initiatives are never achieved by kinetic measures like airstrikes, invasions, or whatever. No, it also encompasses economic, social, and cultural conditions in which the stakeholders themselves have to be involved because they understand the problem, they live with the problem, they know where the problem arose from, and they are in the best position to better engage with the problem. I believe that's the
That's
best way for
some
any sustainable peace.
That's some really constructive insight. And on that note, Wole, thank you so much for speaking to Fair Observer again. And I would love to have you back if Nigeria
Okay.
is again in the news. And we should definitely continue this part of discussion on what's happening in Nigeria and in Africa.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Rohan. It's always good to share my views on what's happening in my country.
Thank you.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.